dozen different ways to present your photographs. We live in the age of multimedia, after all, and choosing just the right file type for your purposes can be a little bit intimidating. In fact, you might sometimes feel like you've been clunked down in the middle of a strange jungle teeming with insect sounds and wild carnivorous animals. But don't worry, in this lesson we'll look at some of the file formats and final output options available to you in Photoshop CS6, and you'll see that with just a little bit of exploration and the right kind of guidance, that scary jungle is really just a tropical resort. So which file format is best for your project? Well, that depends on what you're going to use the image for. Is it going to be shown online, or in a gallery, or on a website, or maybe in print? Different file formats are optimized for different uses. An image intended for the web will usually be saved in a file format that is smaller so it doesn't take up so much space on a server and will load quicker on a user's computer. I mean, we've all been on websites that take forever to load because of the giant images, and nobody really wants that. On the other hand, an image intended to be printed and perhaps framed will be much larger, contain much more information in order to create a crisper and sharper image, and take up more storage space. However, you may also want to save a single image in a file type that can be used over a wide range of applications, and this can be done too. The way in which a file format processes image information and reduces the final file size is called compression. You can think of it like an inflatable raft. When you want to store it, you suck out all of the air and compress it into a tiny brick that can fit comfortably in a small compartment or safely on a shelf. When you're ready to use it again, you simply blow it back up or decompress it. There are only two types of compression techniques. These are lossless and lossy. And in case you're wondering, yes, the techno geeks that came up with the second term did lose points for originality. I mean, even this dog looks like she's rolling her eyes at that. Moving on though, lossless techniques are those that manage to reduce file size without removing image detail or color information, while lossy ones do. So let's take a look at a few of the most common file formats available to you in Photoshop CS6 and discuss their advantages, their drawbacks, and their best uses. If you go up to File, Save As, this shows you all of the different image types. First, we'll talk about JPEG. If you're a trivia buff, JPEG stands for Joint Photographic Experts Group, and, as discussed earlier, it's one of the most popular formats for images on the web. It's best suited for photographs and other continuous tone images. JPEG can be used for CMYK, RGB, and grayscale color modes, but it's not compatible with transparencies. One advantage of using a JPEG file format is that you can select a level of compression when you save it. So if I saved as a JPEG here, and it's going to ask me if I want to replace it, this dialog box will open, and it will let me set my compression levels. A higher level of compression means lower image quality, but it also means smaller file size and faster loading times. A higher level of compression means lower image quality, but it also means smaller file size and faster loading times. It also gives you complete control over the image and allows you to make the compromise between compression and quality, a fact that you'll appreciate more and more as you continue to use Photoshop CS6. However, if you plan to print an image, you should save the file with the lowest compression level and the maximum quality. An image with these settings, in most cases, is nearly identical to the original. But it's always a good idea to practice to save the original as a native Photoshop CS6 or PSD file, and then save the JPEG as a copy. This makes it easier to continue to edit the original, and then you can export it into as many different file types as you like. Now when we look at our image options here, this is where you set the compression level. To change these options, you can either click the appropriate box and enter a value on your own, or just click and drag the handle. And you can see that this changes here to give you an idea of what each value means. And if you have the preview box checked, you'll see the file size that will result from your selections. So in this case, if we have it at the largest, it will be 327.4 kilobytes. And at its smallest, we can get it all the way down to 43.7. And here in the Format Options box, this allows you to select the way that web browsers display the image. Now let's talk about a bitmap. BMP or bitmap is an image that is broken down into tiny squares. But what does that mean? Well, you can think of an image that is made up of millions of tiny tiles, each containing a specific color. In fact, if you were to zoom in on a bitmap image, that's exactly what it would look like. So if we zoom way in on this image, you can see it's just tons of squares. And you really can't even tell what the image is when you look at it like that. But of course, if we zoom out again, all those squares come together and make a lot more sense. The reason it's called a bitmap is because the computer is told to put what color into which square, much the same way you would if you were told where to put the pegs in a game of Battleship. The first square in the first row, for instance, may be A1. Bitmap images are best used when it's intended to be viewed exclusively on a computer screen. Creating a bitmap file is almost identical to creating a JPEG. We'll go up here again, File, Save As, and select Bitmap from the choices. Here, this will bring you into your bitmap options box. You can select the operating system that the image is intended to be viewed on, and the color depth. 1 bit represents the lowest quality, which will give you the fastest loading image, while 32-bit represents the highest. Now let's talk about GIF files. GIF, which is spelled GIF, stands for Graphics Interchange Format. They are compressed using a lossless technique and are a popular choice for images on the web. They have a limited color range, however, so they're not suited for high detail or true color images. And, as with all the others, to select a GIF, choose Save As, and select GIF from the image menu. Now, if you don't see GIF here, that may be because it's not available in the color mode that you have selected. If that's the case, you can go up to Image, Mode, change it to Indexed Color, and then when you go back up to your options, you'll see that GIF is now available. Now, most people in this day and age are familiar with PDFs, which stands for Portable Document Format. They're commonly used for text-based documents, but they work very well for images too. One thing to consider, though, is that the user can only view the image if they have Adobe Reader installed. So if you're not quite sure what programs the other person is using, you may not want to choose a PDF. When saving a PDF, you can even preserve some of the Photoshop editing capabilities. And one advantage of a PDF is that you have much more control over compression and appearance than in other file types. For example, if we were to select PDF, this opens up and you can see we have a lot of options here. So you can go through all of those and decide what options you want for your purposes. You can also save your images and graphics on Photoshop so that they're optimized for web or other devices. This way you get the best picture quality possible for however the images will be viewed. To save for the web or other devices, go to File, Save for Web. And this is the dialog box that opens. And if you select and click on a tab at the top of the display, this will let you choose how you want to view your image. So this shows you different formats here. If you choose Original, this will display your image without any optimization. Optimized will display your image with the current optimization settings. 2-up displays 2 versions of your image that will appear side by side. And 4-up will display 4 versions side by side. If you can't view the entire image or graphic, then use the hand tool to view other areas. So you can see we can drag that around. You can also use zoom to magnify or reduce the view of the image. So I can zoom in. I can also do that down here. I can fit it in the view if I want to see the entire image. Now, as you can see, there's an annotation below each of these images. This shows the type of image, in this case a GIF, the file size, and the time it will take to download the image using the modem speed that's been selected. So this is a really good tool if you'll be uploading the image on the web to get an idea of how other users will be able to handle this image. And when you change any of the options to the right of the image, the file size and the download times will change accordingly, as shown here. For mobile devices, for example, you would want smaller file sizes and download times. For the web, you want to use a bit depth of 8 or 256 colors. Any more than that would make the file too large. You can experiment with the different options to learn how to make file sizes larger and smaller, then also use the 2-up or 4-up views to see how different options will optimize the image. This is the best way to learn what works best for you and the reasons that you use Photoshop CS6. When you're finished, you would click Save. And now we'll go over some printing options. If you're familiar with Microsoft Word, Adobe InDesign, or any other page layout or word processing programs, you're probably pretty familiar with the different printing options available to you. The options available in Photoshop CS6 are pretty standard, so let's take a look at them. To see those options, go to File and Print, and then your Print dialog box will open. Here you can specify the printer, select the number of copies you'd like printed, adjust your print settings, which will give you options for paper size and color settings depending on what printer you have installed. And when you're ready to print, you simply would click Print. That is the end of Lesson 13, and you are now finished with this course. By now you should be feeling pretty comfortable and confident working your way around Photoshop, and you can get started on editing your images.